What if I told you that the most iconic feature of the Boeing 747, its majestic hump, wasn't designed for luxury, to house a piano bar, or to become a symbol of status in the skies? What if, in fact, it was the result of a lost bet, a deep-seated fear of obsolescence and a military requirement that almost turned the world's most beloved airplane into a simple cargo freighter? The image we have of the Queen of the Skies, with its exclusive lounges and spiral staircases, is one of the most powerful memories from the golden age of aviation. For many of us, former pilots, engineers, and passengers who lived through that era, the upper deck was the materialization of glamour. But the truth is far more complex and fascinating. The story behind that unmistakable silhouette is not about the pursuit of opulence, but about the struggle for survival of a gigantic project. It is a narrative of how a supposed failure of vision transformed, against all odds, into the greatest asset of a legendary airplane. To understand the origin of the hump, we need to dive headfirst into the 1960s, a decade of paradoxes for commercial aviation. On one hand, the jet age, inaugurated by the Boeing 707 and the Douglas DC-8, had shrunk the globe, enveloping flight in an undeniable aura of glamour and sophistication. Flying was an event, an aspirational experience. However, behind the curtains of luxury, this very success was creating a systemic crisis. Airports, designed for an era of propellers, were on the verge of collapse. Terminals were overflowing, runways were becoming bottlenecks, and the sky, once vast and free, was beginning to feel congested. The industry was a victim of its own triumph. It was in this scenario of imminent strangulation that one of aviation's titans, Juan Trippe, president of Pan American World Airways, envisioned a solution that seemed like heresy to many: not to fly faster, but to fly bigger. Trippe was not just an executive, he was an architect of the future, a man who saw aviation not as a luxury service for the few, but as a mass transportation system for the world. In a legendary meeting with William Allen, president of Boeing, Trippe didn't present a request, but an ultimatum wrapped in a vision. He argued that an airplane with double the capacity of the 707 was not a luxury, but a necessity for the industry's survival. Such an aircraft could reduce the cost per seat, making international travel accessible to the middle class and, crucially, alleviating the pressure on airports by consolidating two flights into one. Legend has it that the deal was sealed with a handshake, a gentleman's bet worth billions of dollars. But Boeing could only accept this monumental challenge because behind the scenes it already held the key. That key, ironically, was the design for an airplane it never built. Shortly before Trippe's proposal, the US Air Force had launched the CX-HLS program, a competition to create a heavy logistics freighter capable of transporting battle tanks and troops anywhere in the world. Boeing invested massively in the development of its model, competing fiercely against Douglas and Lockheed. A central feature of its design was an ingenious solution for transporting oversized cargo. The cockpit was positioned above the main deck, allowing the aircraft's nose to open completely for frontal loading. In the end, Lockheed won with its design, which would become the iconic C-5 Galaxy. For Boeing, the defeat was a harsh blow, but it left the company with detailed plans, extensive aerodynamic research, and most importantly, a team of engineers who knew exactly how to build an airplane of colossal proportions. When Juan Trippe knocked on its door, Boeing wasn't starting from scratch. It was adapting a military dream for a civilian revolution. What seemed like a failure revealed itself to be the strategic foundation that would make the 747 possible. The first great revelation, the key that unlocks the understanding of the 747's entire design, is that its soul was not forged in the skies of passenger travel, but in the scenarios of the Cold War and military logistics. Boeing carried the scar of having lost the CX-HLS heavy freighter contract to Lockheed and its C-5 Galaxy. However, this defeat was converted into an intellectual asset of incalculable value. The company not only retained all the knowledge and engineering plans for a colossal-scale aircraft, but also internalized the design philosophy of an elite military freighter. Therefore, when Juan Trippe demanded a giant for passengers, Joe Sutter's team did not start from a blank slate. They started from a design whose highest priority was cargo capacity and logistical efficiency, not passenger comfort. The DNA of the 747 was, from its conception, utilitarian and pragmatic. The need for a second life as a freighter was not an afterthought or a plan B. It was the fundamental premise upon which everything else would be built. This logistical premise materialized in the project's most important engineering decision, the absolute necessity of a swing nose, for the 747 to be able, in its future life, to swallow irregularly shaped and extremely long cargo, from generators to helicopters and even sections of other planes. Frontal access was indispensable. This single functional requirement acted as a domino effect that dictated the aircraft's entire architecture. With the nose opening upwards, the cockpit, traditionally the eye of the aircraft, became an obstacle. The solution, as radical as it was brilliant, was to tear it from its natural position and elevate it, creating a second floor for the flight crew. This relocation generated a cascade of new challenges, from ensuring pilot visibility from nearly 3 stories above the ground to redesigning escape routes, and, crucially, to smooth the airflow over this new elevated structure. An aerodynamic fairing had to be sculpted behind it. Thus, the hump was born, not as a stroke of elegance, but as the inevitable and purely functional consequence of prioritizing an unobstructed cargo hold. Here we deconstruct the biggest myth. The space created behind the elevated cockpit was, initially, a problem, an unwanted attic with no defined function. Boeing's early concepts for the area were modest and practical, perhaps a small office for the navigator, a rest area for the crew on long flights, or simply an extra cargo compartment. It was the vision of the airlines, driven by Pan Am's marketing genius, that saw the potential of that accidental space. In an era where flying competed with luxury ocean liners, Pan Am transformed what was an engineering compromise into the greatest status symbol in the skies. They took an empty space and filled it with the public's imagination. A first-class lounge, a cocktail bar, a restaurant with table service, and, in some legendary configurations, even a piano. The glamour of the 747 was not designed by Boeing. It was a layer of commercial genius applied over a purely pragmatic engineering solution. The urgency behind this pragmatic solution leads us to the next revelation, the supersonic paradox. The 747's hump is, in essence, a physical monument built by fear. The conviction of Boeing and the entire industry in the 1960s was that supersonic jets would make the 747 obsolete for passengers in less than a decade. This belief was not a fantasy. It was the basis of long-term strategic planning. Therefore, the decision to optimize the 747 for cargo was not just to ensure a second life. It was to ensure its only long and profitable life. Every dollar invested in the project was justified by the certainty that when passengers migrated to the Concorde, the 747 would continue to generate revenue by transporting containers. It became an airplane ahead of its time and, paradoxically, a perceived victim of it. Its most futuristic feature was created because Boeing believed it had no future as a passenger plane. This bet on a dual-purpose design generated a vast and often forgotten cultural consequence. By designing a fuselage wide enough to accommodate 2 standard cargo containers side by side, Boeing created an unprecedented internal volume for the passenger cabin. It was this massive scale that allowed airlines to transport more than 400 people at once, which pulverized the cost per seat kilometer. The result was the democratization of intercontinental air travel. Flying from America to Europe ceased to be a privilege of the elite and became an achievable dream for the middle class. The hump, with its exclusive lounge, became the aspirational symbol of this new era. Even those traveling in economy felt part of something grand, knowing that up there a world of luxury existed. The 747 created not only a physical space, but also a cultural one, forever redefining what it meant to travel the world. Finally, the hump represents the 747's most enduring legacy. In the field of aeronautical engineering itself, it is the Queen's DNA. This design philosophy, creating an adaptable platform, thinking of multiple lives for the same airframe, and turning constraints into advantages, became a pillar of the industry. The 747 taught designers that the most robust and long-lasting solutions are those born from necessity and the foresight of future market shifts. It was not just a machine, It was a masterclass in engineering strategy. The hump is not just molded metal. It is the physical proof that the most iconic design can emerge not from the pursuit of beauty, but from the intelligent pursuit of survival. It is the demonstration that, in aviation, pragmatism can, against all odds, become pure poetry. However, no golden age lasts forever. The same grandeur that made the 747 an icon also contained the seeds of its eventual decline in passenger service. The first blow came abruptly and seismically, not from the skies, but from the ground. The 1973 oil crisis shocked the global economy and caused the costs of jet fuel to skyrocket. Suddenly, the Queen's four imposing engines, once a symbol of power and redundancy, transformed into an almost unsustainable expense. The 747's economic equation was brutally simple. It was only profitable when flying near its maximum capacity. With the recession diminishing travel demand, airlines found themselves forced to fly half-empty jumbos, burning astronomical amounts of fuel to transport more empty seats than passengers. What was once the solution to congestion became a financial burden, a thirsty giant whose operation had become a luxury few companies could afford. While the global economy was shaking the 747's reign, a silent revolution was happening in engineering labs, a technological breakthrough that would ultimately seal its fate. For decades, transoceanic routes were the exclusive domain of aircraft with 3 or 4 engines, a rule based on safety and the need for redundancy when flying for hours over water. However, the development of twin-engine jets, like those that would equip the Boeing 767 and later the revolutionary 777, reached an extraordinary level of reliability. This reliability was formalized by the new ETOPS, Extended Range Twin-Engine Operational Performance Standards, regulations which gradually allowed planes with just 2 engines to fly on increasingly long routes over the oceans. What seemed like innovation, the efficiency of the big twins, ended up becoming the death sentence for quadjets. Airlines could now fly direct point-to-point routes with fewer passengers and a drastically lower operating cost, shattering the hub-and-spoke model that the 747 had helped to build. The result was a slow yet inexorable decline. One by one, major airlines began to announce the retirement of their passenger 747 fleets. Each announcement was a stab in the heart of aviation enthusiasts and professionals. We saw the iconic colors of Pan Am, TWA, British Airways, and so many others disappear from the Queen's silhouette. The planes that were once the pride of their fleets were quietly withdrawn from service and sent on their final flight to the aircraft boneyards in the deserts of California and Arizona. There, under the relentless sun, the machines that connected the world and defined a generation await dismantling. Seeing these queens lined up in the sand with their engines removed and their windows sealed is a powerful and melancholy image. It is the silent end of a loud and glorious era, a testament that in aviation, not even the biggest and most beloved icons are safe from the relentless march of economic efficiency and technological evolution. Retiring a machine, no matter how grand, does not mean erasing its legacy. In the case of the Boeing 747, the end of its production and its withdrawal from passenger service only solidify its place in history as one of the most influential engineering creations of the 20th century. Its first and most profound legacy was that of being the principal architect of modern globalization. Before its arrival, the world was a much larger place. Intercontinental travel was an expensive and time-consuming luxury, accessible to few. The 747, with its unprecedented scale, did not just double passenger capacity, it shattered the cost barrier. By drastically reducing the price per seat kilometer, it put international travel within reach of the middle class for the first time. This triggered the explosion of mass tourism, allowed millions of immigrants to visit their families in their home countries, and facilitated cultural and educational exchanges on a scale never before imagined. Families were connected, businesses became global, and the flow of ideas and cultures intensified in a way that permanently altered our society. Parallel to its social revolution, the 747 left an indelible mark on the very philosophy of aeronautical engineering. It was the living proof of the adaptable platform concept. Born from a forced duality between passengers and cargo, It demonstrated the immense value of designing an airframe that could serve multiple purposes and evolve over time. The success of its numerous variants, from the passenger model to the pure freighter, to the combi, passenger and cargo versions, the extended range, ER, and even the shortened version, SP, taught Boeing and the entire industry a valuable lesson about a product's life cycle. Furthermore, it was the catalyst that made high-bypass turbofan engines the industry standard. The bet on the JT9D proved so successful that today, virtually all medium and large commercial aircraft use this fundamental technology, which continues to be the basis of modern aviation efficiency. The soul of the 747 still flies silently in every efficient jet engine that crosses the skies today. Beyond economics and engineering, the 747's legacy is etched in our collective cultural consciousness. No other commercial aircraft, with the possible exception of the Concorde, has achieved such a universal, iconic status. Its unmistakable silhouette is instantly recognizable, even by those with no interest in aviation. It became a multifaceted symbol. As Air Force One, it is the floating projection of American power and the presidency. As the space shuttle carrier, it was a testament to human technological ambition, a giant carrying another giant. And in cinema, it was the setting for countless stories of adventure, drama, and luxury. The 747 represents a promise, a portal to the world, an emblem of an era when technology was not just functional, but also inspiring and majestic. It is more than an airplane. It is a cultural heritage, a milestone in our collective journey of shortening the distances that separate us. Finally, the most powerful reflection the 747 leaves us with is about the ironic nature of progress. The story of its hump is the perfect metaphor for the entire project. An airplane whose existence was shaped by the deep-seated fear of becoming obsolete ended up becoming the industry standard for 50 years. A design feature born from a purely logistical and utilitarian need became the greatest symbol of luxury and exclusivity in aviation. This teaches us that the greatest innovations rarely follow a straight path. They are born from the collision of planning and chance, between intention and improvisation. The 747 proves that sometimes preparing for failure can be the surest path to a resounding and lasting success. Its legacy is not just about what it did, but about how it was made. A masterpiece born of doubt, an icon forged by necessity, and a queen who secured her throne precisely because she was designed with the humility of one who knows that one day she will have to serve. We have reached the end of our journey through the hidden history of the Queen of the Skies. The story of the Boeing 747 is a mirror of human ambition itself. It teaches us that at times the most brilliant solutions are not born from the pursuit of perfection, but from the humble preparation for impermanence. Its hump, the ultimate symbol of its identity, was not an act of vanity, but an act of survival, a metallic reminder that genius flourishes under the pressure of constraints. Today, when we board a modern flight, we enjoy an efficiency and safety that are, in part, its legacy. But many of us miss something essential: the magic, the feeling that flying was more than a means to an end. Perhaps the Queen of the Skies is bidding farewell to our skies, but her soul, the audacity to dream on a monumental scale, continues to fly in each of us who looks up and remembers the golden age. But the story of the 747 is not complete without its memories. This channel is a community for those who lived and loved that era. And now, the floor is yours. Have you ever flown on the Queen of the Skies? What is your most vivid memory on board? Perhaps you climbed the stairs to the lounge, or maybe you were one of the engineers, pilots, or crew members who brought this legend to life. What was your experience with the Boeing 747? Share your story in the comments. Let's together preserve the legacy of the machine that not only shrank the world but also filled it with wonder.